Hi, this is Kirk, the bariatric carnivore. We've been talking a bit about different diet types, but maybe it's time to take a little deep dive and try to explain what I mean when I talk about a standard American diet versus a keto diet and a carnivore diet. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Just give you some basic definitions of the terms and the various reasons why certain people are having certain effects with these particular types of diets, why people would do keto or carnivore. First of all, though, let me give you a couple of definitions that I think are important at the very start, and they may seem technical, but they're important. Number one is when I say the word diet, I'm not talking about something you do short term in order to lose weight. I'm talking about diet, I'm talking about it more in the generic term, which is what we eat. So it's a style of eating, what you're trying to accomplish with it. So there's the standard American diet, which is what most people eat, versus a keto diet, which is a lifestyle. So I'm not talking about utilizing any of these particular diets as a short-term strategy. I think they are all sustainable and usable for the long term. Number two is when I use the term calories. I don't think calories is a very good metric. It's not the best way to describe how much food you're eating because calories are utilized in different ways. Many people believe in a calories in, calories out model, and that, frankly, is a myth perpetuated by big food. Coca-Cola wants you to believe that a calorie from Coke is equal to a calorie in broccoli, and that's not true because you're not a closed system. The rule of thermodynamics that says that a calorie is a calorie only applies to closed systems. And frankly, you're not a closed system. You're a chemical factory. And the chemicals are utilized in different places. So while calories are not a perfect metric for the amount of food that you eat, they are kind of an accepted model to help make the discussion easier. So when I use the term calories, I'm not talking about a precise measure. You are not going to be able to lose weight by counting calories. That is a stupid way of doing it because look, the food labels are off by 25 to 30%. So you can't utilize calories as a perfect metric. But, for our sake of discussion, we'll utilize it from time to time just to kind of point out the relative volume of different foods that people are eating and why, that can be an important part of it. So when we start off and we're talking about diet, let's talk about the one that most people eat. Over 70% of Americans are on a standard American diet. Well, more than that probably, but 70% of Americans get the bulk of their calories, their food energy, what they're eating every day is coming from ultra-processed foods. And when I say ultra-processed foods, the way the government breaks down food categories for processing is level one would be a whole food. So taking an apple or a grape would be level one processing. There is no processing. You're just eating it right off the shelf. Level two is when you can start to combine ingredients and you heat them, basically cooking. So you're taking a bunch of single ingredient stuff and cooking them together. That would be level two. Level three processing is when you kick it up a notch and you start to chemically change the substance. So you take an apple and you put it in a blender and you add in some sugar and you heat it up. That would be level three processing. And then level four is the ultra processing. And that's what 70% of the bulk of food that most Americans eat in a standard American diet. Standard average American eats roughly about 3,600 calories every day. They're ingesting about 360 grams of carbohydrate every day. They eat about 4 ounces or so, basically a bite of red meat every day. They get the bulk of their protein from chicken, a lot of it skinless without fat, and most of their fats are coming from industrial seed oils. They're not eating a lot of saturated fat from meat or coconut oil or avocado or olive oils, but instead industrial seed oils. And industrial seed oils are manufactured products where they take corn, canola, cottonseed, they chemically change those plants and they turn them into an industrial oil that was originally designed to lubricate machine parts, but the food manufacturers have managed to convince people that this is the heart healthy alternative. And I'll do other videos that explain why I think that's so particularly dangerous. Now, there's three things that were added to the standard American diet in the last century that has, I think, caused a host of problems. Number one is our sugar consumption increased from about 18 pounds annually to over 180 pounds. The average American eats about a half a pound of sugar every day. And you may think, oh, wait a second, I don't put a half a pound of sugar in my food, but it's being added to you. Big food, because of the manufactured ultra-processed food, is trying like crazy to make you addicted to their product. They want you to eat more of it. So what they found out is if you add sugar to things and you create a savory type of flavor to it, you create what's called a bliss point. And when that's put in there, it melts in your mouth. It sends off a dopamine reception. And when they put in more sugar, they get your attention and give you more dopamine reception. And that is the problem. The food is addictive, and it's not particularly healthy. But that's what most people eat every single day. They're getting their fats from vegetable oils, and they're eating a lot of processed grains or ultra-processed grains. These are corn, wheat, etc., that have been processed in the factory, heavily milled, turned into fine powders. And the problem with these, and the reasons why we eat so much of it, is because it's cheap. This is heavily subsidized by the government, and as a result, these are very inexpensive ingredients that food manufacturers can put into their foods, selling you cheaper and cheaper food that's not all that great for your health. What is the end result? Well, the end result with most people eating the standard American diet is half of America has a chronic disease, which means that costs $6,000 a year on average per chronic disease. These are type 2 diabetes, psoriasis, irritable bowel syndrome. And that $6,000 a year is in medical costs. We're not talking about lost time and productivity. We're talking about this is how much it costs just for medical costs. There's other costs associated with it too. It's killing America's health. That's what the average person eats. And that's as a result, only about 12% of America's what they would consider metabolically healthy. Most studies have shown that between 8 to 12% of Americans do not have one of the markers of poor metabolic health. Most of that blame can be laid square at the feet of our diet. Our food is not just fuel. Our food determines what our health is. It's like, they said a long time ago, let food be thy medicine. And bad food leads to more medicine. Good food is good medicine. So, if you're eating standard American diet, you're having problems. There are some people that have gone on to, but the next thing I heard, my first awareness that there were alternatives to the standard American diet and the food pyramid, what our government was telling us was healthy to eat, was a thing called a paleo diet. And I never really got into it, but I heard about it, which was more of an ancestral appropriate diet where people were putting an emphasis on real food, getting away from the ultra-processed food, a lot of emphasis on nuts and stuff like that. And I never got into it enough to really understand it completely because I didn't think it was, I didn't buy all the science. I thought a lot of it was mythology and it was a cute idea, but I didn't think there was science behind it. Where I did start to take things seriously was going to a ketogenic diet. And a keto diet, as it's more popularly called, was one that was introduced to me by Dr. Stephen Phinney, who has his PhD from MIT and his medical degree from Stanford. The guy had serious credentials. And when I heard him talking about metabolic health and the importance of a low-carb diet, that really got my attention. That's what began my journey into trying to understand a keto diet. And there's two probably big thought leaders that I think you can take to the bank as far as when they describe a well-formulated ketogenic diet, you can really pay attention to. That would be Dr. Eric Westman, and he heads up the ketogenic program at Duke University. He helps people to get off of carbs and get off their diabetes medicine and lose weight. And that center, and he's created a formula that I think is healthy and sustainable for most people. And Dr. Stephen Finney, who's the chief medical officer at Virta Health, which is a for-profit company that, again, whose mission is to help people reverse their type 2 diabetes and go for keto diet. And the way they describe a well-formulated keto diet is reducing the amount of carbs from the standard 360 that the average American eats down to 25 to 40. And that's crucial to really understanding the keto diet. If you're going to, a ketogenic diet is not a calorie restriction diet, it is a carb restriction diet. It is really working hard to reduce the number of carbs. And the idea behind it is simply this. The more carbs you eat, the more insulin you're going to produce. And insulin it's an important nutrient in our body, and it helps with a host of different things. And the hormone insulin is vital. You have to have it. If you don't have insulin, you're a type 1 diabetic, and you have to inject artificial insulin into the body in order to stay alive. So it's crucial. But too much of it is a problem, because insulin has one of its effect is that it helps the body accumulate fat, because it helps process glucose out of the bloodstream. The blood can only take about 2 teaspoons of glucose at any given time. So it tightly regulates the system. Insulin is part of that process of getting glucose out of the system and into the liver and into your fat stores. So, the other problem with glucose and insulin is it's highly inflammatory. It damages the arteries. And the only way that they found to reduce this inflammation is by reducing the amount of carbs in your diet. So that's the idea, kind of in a nutshell, of why a keto diet is so important. It's highly anti-inflammatory, and your body will quit running on glucose. When you're eating 360 grams of carbohydrate every day, like the average American does, your body's running on glucose. It's not utilizing ketones as an energy source. Ketones are what fat becomes to become energy that's usable for the body. It is a clean burning fuel that your brain actually kind of prefers, and it's not very inflammatory. So it's a natural state. When you're born in a state of ketosis. When you're drinking breast milk, you're fully ketogenic. It isn't until you start adding in carbs that you become glucose. You start running on glucose. So keto diets are low carb for a reason, and that's the macro that they're tracking, number one. They also found that by increasing the amount of fat, so 70% of a well-formulated diet is going to be in the form of healthy fats. And when I say healthy fats, I'm not talking about industrial seed oils. We're talking about fats such as coconut oil, olive oil, avocado, olive, and coconut. Those are the 3 ones, plus saturated fat from meat. And these fats help the body hit ketosis, where you're producing ketones, and they would consider that you're in nutritional ketosis when your blood is now utilizing it. There's a marker of about 0.5, and when you've got that level of ketones in your blood and you track that, you can do it through breath analysis, which is measuring an acetone, which shows how much ketones are in your bloodstream, or you can do a finger stick and you can measure your ketone level there. And either one of those will give you a good indication of whether your body is utilizing ketones as its primary energy source. So that's the idea of it. Now, when I say 25 to 40 grams of carbohydrates, where do you get the carbohydrates from? And they really recommend utilizing natural foods, particularly vegetables. They don't spike the blood sugar. They consider that part of a healthy diet, and 40 grams or so of regular pure carbohydrate, single ingredient foods doesn't seem to throw the body out of ketosis. Then they can also throw in some fresh fruits and vegetables, particularly berries seem to work well. So then there's some areas that are gray areas or danger areas for a lot of people. Dairy in particular. Can you eat dairy on a keto diet? And some people do. They'll utilize heavy cream. Let me give you a caveat though. When you are on a keto diet, stay the heck away from skim milk. Skim milk is the number one food that pig farmers use to fatten up their pigs. It is pure sugar. It is a Coca-Cola of dairy products. There's hardly any nutrients in there. There's not any good fats, and it's full of sugar. So stay away from skim milk. So if you're going to drink dairy, make it, regular heavy cream, or, worst comes to worst, whole milk. Again, use it sparingly. Not everybody likes it. Not everybody can tolerate it. And cheese is another dangerous area. Cheese contains a natural sugar called lactase. That's a trigger for a lot of people. So, they think they're being keto by eating lots of cheese, but they're really getting more carbs than they think. So use it sparingly, if at all. Don't have to, but some people like it. I throw cheese in occasionally on stuff because I like it. I like the flavor and I utilize it for different recipes. Not everybody does though. It's not mandatory. The other caveat I would give you about a keto diet is stay away from the ultra processed foods. There are food marketers, big fooders, realizing that keto is kind of here to stay, and they creating all these keto products, keto ice cream, keto bombs, etc. And they're all just ultra processed food that utilize a trick called net carbs, and they try to create fillers and fibers and stuff like that to say that, well, the only carbs that you're getting from that are these natural carbs, and they say it's a net carb effect. And really, that's smoke and mirrors. Try to avoid that at all possible costs. Look at the total carbs, not just the net carbs. And that will help keep you away from a lot of that stuff. Plus, it's ultra-processed food. It's absorbed in the body differently than a real food. And frankly, if you're going to take the time to do a keto diet, stick to real food. Utilize the stuff that your body is utilizing. And that's kind of a nutshell of what a keto diet is. Now let's take keto and put it on steroids, and now we're talking about the carnivore diet. And the reason why I became very interested in the carnivore diet is because it's an elimination diet. There's a lot of research that's been done on people that eat meat, and hardly anyone has an inflammation response to ruminant animals. So if you're eating steak all the time, you're not going to get an inflammatory response. And that's why a lot of people have been gravitated toward carnivore diet, particularly those with autoimmune issues, IBS, psoriasis, those type of issues, and mental health issues, because they found that it is so anti-inflammatory, and they can eliminate things that might be inflaming them that they're not aware of. And that's what's really cool about it when you first start off is, when you just go pure meat for 3 months and then you add in an ingredient one at a time, you can find out that, oh, this is the thing that triggers me. This is the thing that causes me the pain. This is why I wake up in the morning and I don't feel good. And I realized I did not know this when I began this, but I used to love spinach and I ate it for a long time. And then I hadn't had it for months. And I had some friends over. They wanted a spinach salad. I made a spinach salad for a side. And I ate spinach for the first time in years. And I woke up the next morning with the same body aches that I remembered from 8 years ago before I started keto. And I realized that there's something in spinach. There's some ingredient in it that causes inflammation and causes me pain. Who knew? And I would have never known that unless I'd done the elimination. See, people don't realize that plants, because they're not mobile, have a lot of chemical defense mechanisms built into them. Look at all the plants that are out there in the world. Very few of them are edible. And there's ingredients in them that are designed to keep away insects, critters that will eat them. And those chemical defenses can have an effect on you too. Now, there are some arguments that say that those chemical defense mechanisms, by putting them in small doses, actually makes our immune system stronger. I don't think there's great science on that, but it's an argument for sure that, by eating small amounts of these particular chemicals, we're boosting our own immune system. Maybe not. Whether fiber makes a difference, is a real question mark. There are some people that believe very strongly that fiber is necessary to keep our microbiome healthy. I don't think it's been mapped out well enough to be able to make a definitive statement on that. But I understand the argument on this. So when you're eating carnivore, you're eating basically as close to zero carb diet as you can get and zero fiber, which frankly, I did a video on that. I'll link it below on why fiber isn't all that important. But, recognize that that's what's happening. There's going to be some metabolic changes that happen when you get rid of all the fiber and you get rid of the carbs. There's going to be a change in your gut microbiome. Oftentimes, it results in diarrhea for some people when they make that initial change, because your guts are going to kind of argue with you on your body when you go zero fiber. The beauty, though, of a carnivore diet is really its simplicity. You don't have to really think about what you're eating. You're going to be eating primarily beef, bacon, butter, and eggs. That's 90% of my calories. Now, I'm not a pure carnivore. I'm carnivore-ish. I like cheese. I'll throw cream into my coffee. I still drink coffee. And there's some people that, think that coffee is bad. I'm not one of those people. I think it's, kind of a gray area that some people have tolerance for, some people don't. If you like coffee, I can't think of any great studies that show that it's absolutely verboten. There are some people that would disagree with me on that one, that you will never understand how good you can feel until you get rid of coffee. And at some point I may try to go without coffee for a few months just as an experiment to see if it does make a difference. But for right now, I drink coffee and I'll throw heavy cream in it and butter, because I've had bariatric surgery. There's a limit to how much food that I can eat at any given meal. It is a way of getting additional energy into my system. Not everybody can do it. My weight, since I've gone more carnivore and keto, my weight has remained fairly stable. When I'm in those diets, when I'm staying, and eating within those parameters, my weight remains remarkably stable, and it's impressive. I'm putting on more muscle mass. One of the things that, is interesting when it comes to keto and carnivore is there's no real measure of calories. People don't care about that. They care about the macro and what you're eating, not how many calories you're eating. So that is a quick overview of the different types of diets and maybe some of the relative pluses and minuses to all of them. And the only negative I have heard about keto and carnivore, besides those people that freak out about saturated fat, and to those people that freak out about the amount of saturated fat, that tell you, oh, you need to cut down the amount of saturated fat that you have and you need to lose weight. Well, if you're losing weight, which means you're eating your stored body fat, what is that stored body fat if nothing more than cholesterol and saturated fat? To me, they haven't thought this through, because, we're going to be utilizing fat, and that can come from animal sources or it can come from your own fat, but either way, it's saturated fat, and if that's bad for your cholesterol, then losing weight would give you a heart attack. So they're not thinking this thing completely through. So that's one argument I've heard against a keto and carnivore diet. The other one is this: it's unsustainable. And I frankly find that to be the biggest hunk of nonsense out there. I have never been able to eat a standard, healthy, low-calorie diet for more than a couple of months. It creates a sense of sensation of starvation. It becomes a mental obsession. To me, that has never been sustainable. I don't think you can sustain a vegetarian or vegan diet. 80 to 90% of the people that try to eat a vegetarian diet quit within the first year because it's unsustainable. It's too restrictive. The carnivore diet, keto diets, while at one level seem to be restrictive, I find to be kind of liberating. I don't have to think about the food that I'm eating, and I find it delicious. Meat is satiating. I just eat every day until I'm full. And when I'm full, I quit eating. And I'm always aware when I'm eating meat of the fact that I am full. When I'm eating ice cream or cake, I could never tell when I was full. That's one of the beauties of this program. So I don't think the unsustainability of these diets is a really good argument. It just works, and it's simple, and it doesn't require a lot of thought. So this is Kirk, the Bariatric Carnivore. If you like this message, if you want to join our community, if you've seen major health changes from switching from a standard American diet to a keto or carnivore diet, please put your comments below. Help encourage other people to at least give this way of eating a try for a few months. And hit the like and subscribe button. The more people we join the community, the more people can see this message, because the algorithm of YouTube doesn't allow people to see it unless other people have watched it and like it. So thank you very much. We try to put out a new message every weekday, and I will talk to you later.